Okay, I'm going to show you the process I used to translate the walking pose I just created into a fashion illustration from this reference photo. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm just coming back to the walking pose I created in the last video. I grabbed a 4B and I'm just going to darken up my lines so that I can keep this and it won't get too faded away. So, and then the other thing is in just a minute, I'm going to be tracing this walking pose and I'll be able to trace it more easily if I can see my lines. It's also a good opportunity to practice line quality. I always encourage students to practice your line quality. Try to make your lines thicker, thinner, more elegant, more graceful. And that's really good for hand control as well. Plus, it just makes your drawings look nice. Okay, so here's my walking pose. Here is a blank piece of paper. Let me go ahead and now put the garments on her. Okay, because I don't think you guys can see this, I'm just gonna trace it quickly. I'll pause and get this traced. Okay, I've got her traced. Now at this stage, you guys are probably feel like you're repeating yourself because we started with the one that we drafted for the high hip pose, and then we turned that into a walking pose, which I went over the lines, and I'm going to save this for future reference. And now I've got one on another piece of drawing paper that's going to become my working sketch of this outfit. Just be careful that things aren't getting lost in translation. Because we've traced it a couple of times, it's a good idea to go back. Make sure that your head is still 1 3/8. That was our measurement for our 9 heads to fit on this nice tall 14 by 17 paper. We started out with our head at 1 3/8, and the entire body is based on 9 of those heads stacked on top of each other. That's how we get fashion proportions for women. Face proportions, we've got that in a different video. I'll just put in a couple of reference lines here, and let's start putting the clothes on her. So this big skirt is actually going to cover a lot of her legs. So you really don't even have to take the time to draw too much of the legs here. But let me go ahead and put in the curve of her waistband. I can see her belly buttons right there. So I will go ahead and drop this down about like that. Remember, our fashion illustrations are stretched taller than an actual person is. So the proportions might seem a little different as you're doing this. And now I'm going to put in the skirt. I'm going to be probably changing that hand and that hand, so that will come in a second. But let me get the skirt lightly roughed in. I recommend that you get the general shape first, out to the side, and maybe out to the side like that. And now, before I get too involved, I want to get the hem, okay? So let's look at where the hem falls. It's kind of a midi length, so I'm going to go about here on her shin, maybe about like that, and look at what angle it's making, and let's lightly pencil in that angle. It is coming and covering this part of her foot. Now, her foot's actually higher than the foot that I drew before, so I can change that as well. Once I'm here, I can connect up towards her hip. Okay, it's going to do something like that. At this stage, I need to erase some things that are going to be covered so that I don't confuse myself. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that part of her leg because I'm not going to see it. And just think about what angle things are. Make sure that it seems logical. This part of her hem is doing a shape like this, whoosh. So let me see if I can capture that from about here up. We'll go something like that and then connect up. Okay, and once I have that, I can erase away this leg because I don't need that anymore. Okay, we're off to a good start. I'm going to start working in the details. So when I do this, and there's other ways I'm sure you could think this through, but I'll just talk you through how I do it. I'm going to look at the tiers. How many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4 tiers of this skirt. Okay, so let me just make sure my proportions are about right. These tiers are a little smaller. 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3 all look about the same. I think that'll work, okay? I feel like I lucked out and kind of got something I can work with there. But if you need to take a second and just kind of figure out about where your tiers are going to go, do it. Now's the time to figure that out. Now that I've kind of roughly lined them in, let me see if I can carry them across. What I want you to notice is that it's curving up and then down because it's going over this leg that's pushing it forward. And then let's see if we can get this one about like that. And we've got, wait a minute, did I miss one? 1, 2, 3, no, I'm okay. And then this one is sort of coming down and following the shape of the hem. And then we've got this side of it over here. Okay, so I drew those pretty smoothly, but when we look closely at it, it's actually making a lot of little rumples and wrinkles. So let's now start putting in some of that detail. Let me see here, hold on just a sec. Okay, I'm back. So let's go ahead and rumple up all of these lines. I'm not going to be too precious about it. I just need to show that it's gathered and there's a lot of fullness going on. So I'll do a wiggly line, kind of imperfectly wiggly. And then once I've got some wiggly line in there, and by the way, I'm using a 2B for this, I'm going to come down and I'll do all these fun swoopy loopies, okay? Just keep looking back at your reference photo, making sure that your swoopies and loopies are going in the right direction, because if you're not going this way mostly on these ones, do you see it? Think about the angles that things are going on. We want to echo those angles. And if you get the angles wrong, it kind of throws the illusion off. So wiggle your line, come in, pull some swoopy loopies in. When we get to the hem, let me put a couple more swoopy loopies and then I will talk about the hem. And this is just a practice drawing, okay guys? So this is where we're working out our decisions and trying to get the proportions right and making everything look the way we want it to. After we get it all worked out here, we are going, and maybe a little shading if we want to just make sure that we're getting our shading in the right spot. At that point, what we're going to do is we're going to transfer it to color, okay? So this is where we work out all of our mistakes and our whatever, like make a mess on this paper. This is your chance to sort of sort everything out and erase as needed, and then once we've got it figured out, then we'll go ahead and move it onto our final paper. Okay, let's talk about the hem. When we do the hem, the way I typically think of it is I will just go and do something a little crazy like that. I'm not trying to be too perfect because it doesn't honestly matter in my opinion, but I do want to sort of capture the vibe of how there's so much fullness that there's sort of a switchback with the hem. And when you do that, anytime you have a fold on your line, you can drag lines back up to show that that hem is really folding back on itself. And then over here on this side, we've got a whole lot of stuff going on. I would approach this two different ways, either the same way I just did, or what might work better here is from my edge, I'm gonna sweep up a few times, and at each sweep, I'll connect it out. And I think that might work better for a situation down here. We go here and then back there and like that. And then down here like that, okay. Okay, I think that's gonna be just fine for the skirt. And with this, I feel like when I look at this drawing each time, I notice new little things, like the fact that she's got a scrunchie on her wrist. Let's talk about the hands real quick. So this hand, if you look at how it's sort of bent inwards from the wrist, I think I can keep my hand in a pretty similar position. I'll keep my thumb, but what I'll do is I'll put her fingers kind of bending inwards towards her skirt, almost holding it down a little bit, and then I can let the skirt pop out from behind. Okay, give it a little bit of silhouette action where each of the tiers is sort of popping out. Okay, so that can be one hand. And then the other hand is actually coming forward. So if this is her wrist, I can go ahead and just redraw this hand to put it in front. So we'll go thumb and back of the hand, and then we've got some fingers right there. And that's probably fine. There we go. I think I'm still not great at talking while drawing, especially drawing the parts that I need to pay attention to. Okay, that is gonna have a scrunchie and all this stuff, and then we'll go ahead and put her shirt in there. I want you guys to look closely. If you choose to do this drawing, you guys have several to choose from. Look at the image online, because you're able to see a lot more detail here. I picked these garments because they have sheer, so we get a little practice illustrating sheer. I picked this one because it has sparkle, which is always fun to try to illustrate. And your other choices are these ones. We've got some nice sheer leggings. This is sheer over sheer over sheer, which is a really fun one to do. So pick one that you really like. My advice though is look at the photo, the reference photo, more than you look at my examples. I'm going to put my examples in Canvas for you guys, but I really want you guys to be looking at the reference photo more so than my examples. My examples are there for you if you get stuck, but I don't want you to use them as a kind of a crutch, because it'll keep you from learning the skills. And I also think it's going to inhibit your drawing style. I want you guys to develop your own drawing style by drawing from reference photos. Okay, we'll move on to making some recipes and transitioning to color in the next video.